Hello everyone, welcome to IASbaba. Welcome to Mains Rapid Revision series. So in this rapid revision, we are going to start with the modern Indian history. So in this modern Indian history, we are going to cover all the aspects of the syllabus that has been mentioned. So what has been mentioned in modern Indian history syllabus? That is mentions like the modern Indian history from about the middle of the 18th century until the present, significant events, personalities as well as major issues. Okay, that is covering from middle of the 18th century to until the present times. At the same time, in the second part, it mentions that one, the major part of the syllabus talks about the freedom struggle. Okay, the freedom struggle, its various stages. We know freedom struggle at 3 stages: moderate phase, then again extremist phase, then again the Gandhian phase. And important contributors and contribution from different parts of the country. Okay, so now in this rapid revision series, we are going to take up all the topics that is mentioned in the modern Indian history in a topic wise. Okay, so not in a class wise, but rather in a topic wise. So it is going to be very crisp and in a very precise manner. We are going to understand at the same time the different questions will also be discussed about the modern Indian history that has been asked from the last 2013 to 2022, last 10 years of questions. All the questions will be discussed. At the same time, a new kind of questions I will also keep on adding. At the same time, we can keep on discussing in this particular sessions too. Okay, so without further ado, we can start with, as the syllabus mentioned. What is the syllabus mentioned? That is the modern Indian history from about the middle of the 18th century, and that is the reason we are starting with 18th century Indian political structure. Okay, so now what was the political structure? So what kind of political framework was there in India that attracted these foreigners and particularly the British, and who established a dominance in India? To understand that one, we have to understand the nature of the political structure of India in 18th century. Of course, 18th century Indian politics can be understood in 2 ways. That is, first and foremost, we have to understand the central level politics. The central level, we can talk about the Delhi level. That is, Delhi was the major political capital of India, particularly from the time period of the early medieval times. Okay, so with the establishment of Delhi Sultanate, with the establishment of Mughals, Delhi had the same status as the Magadha region. That is, Magadha region has the same political status way back in ancient times, and now Delhi got the status from the time period of medieval times. Okay, so now we are going to divide this particular section, the political structure of the 18th century, into central level political system as well as the provincial level political system. So what was the nature of the politics at the central level, and what was the nature of the politics at the provincial level? So, and at the same time, in this rapid revision series, we are going to focus more on analytical aspect as well as the major facts associated with that analysis. So that is how that would help you to fetch that extra marks in the mains examination. Okay, so now we will talk about the 18th century, that is from 1700 to 1800. First, we will talk about the central level. The central level, like I already mentioned, that is at the Delhi level. Okay, so that was the political capital of India, especially from the time period of Delhi Sultanate. Now, by 1700, okay, by especially the actual date is 1707, where the death of Aurangzeb happened. Okay, the mighty Aurangzeb, that is the Mughal rulers can be categorized into 2. That is the mighty Mughals as well as the later Mughals. The mighty Mughals are the first 6 Mughals, that is from Babar, Humayun, then again Akbar, Jahangir, Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb. Why they were called as mighty Mughal? They were far more powerful, and they never let any foreigners to violate the laws of the land. Okay, but what happened after Aurangzeb's death is that one, that is now the Mughal started to disintegrate. The breakup of the Mughal empire starting to happen, and this Mughal empire was stretched from northern India to southern India and from nearly the northwestern part of the subcontinent to until Assam. Okay, so that is, so the almost 80 to 90% of the entire subcontinent was part of the Mughal empire. But what happened after 1707, after the death of Aurangzeb, is that one, at the central level, at the Delhi level, so the politics started to crumble. Okay, so that is particularly the later Mughals, after Aurangzeb, whichever the rulers came, like we talk about Farrukh Siyar, we talk about Bahadur Shah, we talk about Alamgir II, we talk about, I'd say, Akbar II. Okay, so all these persons were called as what? Later Mughals. So at the central level, that is at the Delhi level, the later Mughals were ruling, who were very weak and incompetent toward the Mughal integrity. And these kind of keywords are very important, especially for writing answers. Always focus on these kind of formal keywords too. Now they were incompetent successors. At the same time, they were weak politically and they were weak militarily. At the same time, they were incompetent to hold the entire Mughal empire into unified center. Okay, so that was the major problem that India was experiencing in the 18th century, especially in the beginning of 18th century, and that again, that disintegration again kept on increasing. It became faster by the time of the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century. Okay, now the entire Mughal structure, the centralized structure, was starting to crumble, and the weak rulers, they let the nobles dominate the politics. Like when you compare the mighty Mughals with the later Mughals, they were called as mighty Mughals because they never let any kind of nobles, these nobles are nothing but these are aristocratic classes, the extension of the royal family member, these are ministers, nothing but. So these mighty Mughals never let these nobles to dominate the politics, because the kings kept these nobles under the control. But these weak rulers, the later Mughals, they let the nobles to play the role of the kingmakers. They let the nobles to interfere in the political structure, or we can say political decision making too. Particularly, example, that is how when you let these particular nobles to dominate the political system, the two of the Mughal rulers got assassinated by their nobles themselves. Some of the powerful nobles of that point of time, particularly you must have heard about the names like Zulfikar Khan, okay, and then again Sayyid brothers, okay, Sayyid brothers, okay, they were far more powerful than the kings, than the Mughal kings. So they were the real center of power compared to the kings themselves. So these nobles, they dominated the political system. So they were the real center of power behind the throne, and these nobles went into the extent of assassinating the Mughal emperors. Okay, so that is how the incompetent rule was becoming. That is how weak these successors were. And particularly, and some of the other rulers like Muhammad Shah, who is famously called as Muhammad Shah Rangila, so who is lived a life of luxury as well as ostentation. What do I mean ostentation? That is life of display. That is life of, we can say, lavish lifestyle. Okay, so all these things led to the administrative breakdown. Okay, that was the major thing that India was facing, because of the political structure was crumbling at the center. Now administration breakdown was happening, and this administration breakdown ultimately led to what? Led to the neglect of military system, the neglect of military administration also. Okay, and ultimately all this favored the foreigners who came to India. Okay, so this is what happening at the central level. The weak rulers, incompetent rulers, let the nobles dominate the politics, and that led to administrative breakdown, and that led to the neglect of the military administration also. Okay, so now what was happening at the provincial level? The provincial level means we are talking about at the Mughal provinces. Okay, so Mughal provinces like Deccan, and Mughal province like Gujarat, then again Bengal, then again Awadh region, at the northwestern part of the continent, like we can talk about Punjab region. So what was the provincial level politics? What was the nature of the political structure of India at the provincial level or at the regional level in the 18th century, that is 1700 to 1800. Now what happened at the provincial level? Many independent and semi-independent states emerged. See, what happens if you have read about the feudalization? What do you mean feudalization? Feudalization is that a decentralized structure. Once the kings become weak at the center, now what happens? The regional governors, they start to assert their supremacy. They start to assert their independence. So that is exactly what was happening in India, in Indian political structure in the beginning of the 18th century. Some powerful nobles who couldn't able to showcase their talent at the central level, okay, they became disillusioned or disappointed with the central level politics that was happening in India, especially in the Mughal court. So they declared independence, and they became quite independent, or we can sometimes the semi-independent of the Mughal rule too. At the same time, there were other empires, the other states emerged as a challenge to Mughal empire also, that we can say Marathas as well as Punjab too. So at the provincial level, many independent and semi-independent states emerge, and these states, and both kind of these states, that is independent states as well as semi-independent states, can be categorized into two. So one category can be called as successor states, and the other category can be called as the rebellion states. And what is the difference? What is the difference between successor states as well as rebellion states? That's what we are going to discuss. That is the two types of states. That is the successor states as well as the rebellion states. These successor states are semi-independent states. Okay, these were semi-independent. Okay. And these rebellion states completely independent. Independent of what? Independent of whom? Independent of the Mughals. Okay, Mughals were the major ruling family. Almost 80 to 90% of Indian territory was being controlled by the Mughals. Now semi-independent of Mughals. Mughal Empire now is starting to crumble, starting to disintegrate. Now on the rubbles of the Mughal Empire, different types of states emerge. They can be called as successor states, and some of them can be called as a rebellion states. Rebellion means in the revolt against the Mughals. Okay, they rose in revolt against the Mughals. And what are the successor states? Successor states, like these powerful nobles over there, were serving as the governors of these regional states like Bengal, as well as we can talk about Hyderabad, and then again Awadh region, Karnataka region. They became semi-independent of the Mughal imperial authority. Semi-independent in the sense is that one, these governors are going to recognize the nominal authority of the king, and they are going to mint the coins in the name of the Mughal imperial king. At the same time, they are going to collect revenue in the name of the Mughal authority. But they had lot more independence with respect to internal administration, revenue administration, as well as law and order administration. But the administration was in the name of the Mughal king. That is the only difference. But these rebellion states, completely against the Mughals, there is no supremacy, there is no sovereignty of Mughals over the rebellion states. But there is a supremacy or nominal supremacy of the Mughals over the successor states, because these nobles were far more powerful than the later Mughals kings. Okay, because later Mughals kings, when the foreign invasion of Nadir Shah and Ahmad Shah Abdali was happening, they took the help of the successor states governors. Okay, particularly like Hyderabad Nizam. Okay, then again Awadh Nawabs, then again Bengal Nawabs, to help Mughal kings to stay in power, at the same time to repel the foreign invasion also. That is, which were previously under the Mughal. And these areas, these successor areas, they were previously Mughal provinces. And these provincial governors, they declared semi-independence. They did not become completely independent of it. Like example, we can talk about Hyderabad region. That is, Hyderabad state was established in 1724 and Bengal was established in 1717. Hyderabad was established by whom? Hyderabad was established by, that is Nizam, that is Kilij Khan, we can also call it. At the same time, Bengal was established by Murshid Quli Khan. Okay, Murshid Quli Khan, and these were very powerful nobles, the very powerful provincial governors. They became disappointed with the central level politics that was happening, because the nobles were a real center of power. So, because they had talent, they had the competency to run their own administration, and that is the reason they became semi-independent of the Mughal authority. Okay, but these powerful and efficient governors became semi-independent of the Mughal authority. At the same time, the kind of a nominal supremacy, the nominal authority of the Mughal kings were imposed over Hyderabad, Bengal and Awadh region, but still recognize the nominal authority of the king by minting coins in the name of the emperor. That is what exactly wanted by the kings, just their recognition of their name. But that was not tolerated by whom? By the mighty Mughals. That's Babar, Humayun, then again Akbar, Shah Jahan, Jahangir, Aurangzeb. They were very powerful nobles. They never let the provincial governors to dominate the political system. Okay, so that is the changes in the political system in India that was happening in the 18th century. And what about the rebellion states? These rebellion states were emerged due to conflict with the Mughals. That is the major difference between successor states as well as rebellion states. And major conflict with the Mughal states happened due to as a challenge to Mughal central authority as well as imperial authority. Okay, what is my imperialism? Imperialism is nothing but the extension of the political territory, the occupation of the political territory. Now, there are certain forces, there are certain regional leaders, or we can say regional, we can say charismatic leaders. They challenged the Mughal authority and they established their own empire. They established their own kingdom. Example, we can talk about Marathas and then again Punjab. Why? Marathas, of course, under the leadership of Shivaji. Okay, so Punjab under the leadership of Ranjit Singh. So, okay, this is where the entire Indian political system was moving towards in the 18th century. So, entire political system was, we can talk about kind of a fragmented polity. Instead of the one unified political system which was there from nearly 16th century, from the time period of the Babar, that we can say 1526 so until 1707, that is during the time period of Mughals. Now, once Mughals started to disintegrate, now the entire Indian political system started to become divided, or we can say some kind of fragmented political system started to emerge in Indian subcontinent. Okay. Now, these were, I already mentioned, they were completely independent of the Mughals. No administration in the name of the Mughals and no coins in the name of the Mughals. They had their own type of administration. Okay, so these are the two types of states. Okay, now what are the characteristics of this particular states? Now, before getting into characteristics, just to conclude that one, that is the overall system of politics. What is happening? That is was a division kind of politics, or we can say the entire divided political system was experienced by India in the 18th century. There was one question asked in 2017 UPSC mains. We will discuss that question also. Now, what is the characteristics of these states? The states like Hyderabad, then again you can talk about Marathas, then again Bengal and Awadh, and also you can also add Mysore also. Mysore also one such states, but it cannot be called as either successor states or we can say rebellion states, because Mysore was the successor state of the Vijayanagara Empire, because Mysore was under Vijayanagara Empire. So that was also another state. So we can say the entire Indian political system was regionalized, or we can say localized political system was being dominant in 18th century instead of a unified political system. Now, what are the characteristics? Characteristics like there are lot of differences between these states. The difference in economy, difference in political system, difference in culture, difference in language, like Marathi language, then again Punjabi language, and Bengali language, then again Hindi, then again Telugu and Urdu, then again Kannada. Okay, so these were lot of differences were there among these states, and the differences also led to a lot of conflicts and fightings among themselves. And difference was also there in the political system, the nature of the rule, like the nature of the state also, like Maratha state system was based on plundering and mercenary armies. But at the same time, the Nawabi culture, that is Nawabi political system, was based on the monarchical system. So different types of political system was there. And at the same time, Marathas are known for the plundering of their neighboring states. At the same time, that plundering attitude of Marathas, they brought the neighboring states into conflict. The Marathas had conflict with Nizams, Marathas are conflict with, we can say, Mysore, and Marathas also conflict with Awadh and Bengal too. Okay, so they feared the Marathas because of their powerful mercenary army, and at the same time because of the collection of the Marathas, because they imposed upon Chaut and Sardeshmukhi upon these neighboring states, and there was a lot of conflict among these states, and this conflict was ultimately utilized by Britishers to establish their political supremacy in India. Okay, so this is the characteristics of the regional states. Okay, now we talked about the central level politics, which was disintegrating, which was becoming very weak. At the same time, provincial level politics, that is ultimately coming together into different regional states, and these regional states had a lot of differences. So can we say the entire Indian political system was fragmented? Okay, so ultimately we can talk about the weakening of the central authority. So in 18th century, there was a weakening of the central authority because of two empires crumbled. One is the Mughal Empire, the mighty Mughals replaced by the later Mughals. They were weak and incompetent. Okay. At the same time, in South India, the last great empire was the Vijayanagara Empire. Okay. So in South India, was the last great empire was the Vijayanagara Empire, and way back after the Battle of Talikote, okay, in 1565, so Vijayanagara Empire started to broken into feudal states, and one result of that Vijayanagara feudal state was Mysore. Okay. Result was Mysore. Understood, right? So this is the entire political nature of India. Okay, so especially in the 18th century, from a unified political system which was there, and now it is crumbling into a fragmented political system because of the regional centers of polity. What is the fragmented polity? It means there was no unity, okay, or no unified center. No unified center. Okay, so this was the nature of the Indian political system in the 18th century too. Okay, so what is the impact? What is the impact of this fragmented political system? What kind of consequences this fragmented political system had? Okay, so very simple, this fragmented political system let foreigners to dominate Indian political system. Example, series of invasions happened. Very famous, we can talk about Nadir Shah's invasion of 1739, then Amar Shah Abdali's various invasion in 1750s and 1760s, ultimately culminated into third battle of Panipat. Okay, third battle of Panipat in 1761. Okay, the first two battles, that is 1526, first battle Babar Ibrahim Lodi, and second battle of Panipat, that is Akbar and Yemu. Okay, now it is third battle of Panipat, Amar Shah Abdali and the Marathas. Okay, so now because the centralized political system became weaker, and now what is happening is that is the India was subject to a lot of foreign invasions, and these foreign invaders who came to India, they did not have the intention of staying in India and did not have the intention of establishing the rule over India. They came just as plunderers, and we know Nadir Shah took the Kohinoor diamond, at the same time the Peacock throne of Shah Jahan. Okay, all these kind of things, we are not interested in all those kind of things. But what happened is that the other foreign invasions, like Britishers, who came as traders, and now they sensed the Indian political system which was there, which was crumbling at the weak, crumbling because of the weakening of the central authority. At the same time, among the conflicts with these fragmented states or regional states, they took that advantage and they established their political supremacy in India, and that was to continue until 1947 too. And the lack of strong central authority as well as the emergence of regional powers, that was the nature that weakened the entire political structure, and that led to rise of foreign power, that is the British. Okay, so why are what are the circumstances, what is the political circumstances that led the Britishers to dominate Indian political system? Is that one, the kind of nature of the weakened political structure which was there in 18th century led the Britishers to dominate, and ultimately it became easy for them to defeat the small petty state. Just imagine if Britishers had to face the entire unified Mughal army or the entire unified Marathas army, probably we would have had a different history today. Okay, so probably we wouldn't have had this conversation today. Is right? Now it became easy for Britishers to deal with this petty states. And these petty states, that is the regional centers, they did not have very good cooperation. They lacked the sense of nationalism. They did not have any kind of unity. And there were a lot of conflicts between these states and within these states also. And those conflicts were utilized by Britishers for their imperial schemes. And ultimately, two battles particularly which played an important role, that is Battle of Plassey, that is 1757, and Battle of Bazar, cemented their dominance, whose dominance, that is dominance of Britishers until 1947. Okay, so now did not have to face the unified central authority. So did not have to face the entire huge Mughal army, because Mughal army or Mughal empire by the time of Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb was considered as one of the biggest empires in the world. They were equated with the other two great empires, that is the Ottoman Empire as well as the Persian Safavid Empire. And now this Mughal empire disintegrated. In place of the mighty Mughals, later Mughals were very weak. At the same time, all the Mughal provinces were declared either completely independent or semi-independent, and now Britishers had to deal with this petty small states too. Okay, so that led to ultimately the crumbling of the Indian political structure. Okay, now one question was asked with respect to the political structure of India in 18th century. That is in 2017 UPSC question, that is mains question. Clarify how mid 18th century India was beset with spectre of fragmented polity. So you now have the answer to this particular question. That is, how to answer this very simple introduction you just have to write about. That is, there was a political stability in India. Okay, there was political stability from when to when, especially from 16th century to 18th century, for 200 years. Okay, for 200 years there was political stability, and this political stability started to disintegrate. Okay, and this disintegration could be understood in two levels of political system. That is at the central level of political system in India in 18th century, as well as the provincial level of political system. And the central level we already discussed about later Mughals. Okay, at the same time administrative breakdown. Okay, then again military weakening. Okay, at the same time at the provincial level, either successor states as well as rebellion states, and at the same time they had a lot of conflicts among themselves. Okay, so all this borne out the fragmented nature of the Indian political system. And this, in conclusion, in both of this, in conclusion, what you are going to write is that one, that is, this fragmented political system was utilized by whom? That is played into the advantage of British East India Company, with Battle of Plassey and Battle of Bazar ultimately continued their dominance until 1947 in India. Okay, so this is the entire structure of the answer. That is, clarify how mid 18th century, that is from mid 18th century, somewhere around from the 1750s. Of course, the mid 18th century politics had its genesis in the beginning of the 18th century. So India was beset with spectre of fragmented polity, and you can also bring out the conflicts of this provincial states, that provincial states like Bengal, Awadh, Hyderabad, and then again Carnatic and Mysore, all these kind of states. Okay, so this is about the first topic that we discussed, that is the political nature of India in the 18th century. Okay, so thank you so much for watching this video. At the same time, we will see you in the next session.